Hello, 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 and welcome back to Rhetoric with Shakia. I'm Shakia, and in this episode, we're going to continue our Suddenly Amish conversation, Season 1, Episode 6, over on TLC. So this episode begins with James banging on the door to the room where Matt and Kendra are staying because remember, they snuck out and they went to a hotel. They wanted some time alone. They had a date and they, I guess, wanted to continue the date, just the two of them. James gets wind of this. He heads over to the hotel and now he's knocking on the door. Matt and Kendra are like, wait a second, what's up? What's happening? They don't get up to open the door apparently, but James continues to knock. And they said this banging, no pun intended, went on for quite some time. Eventually, James leaves. He heads back to the house. However, Kendra said the knocking went on for so long and it was so loud that the walls were shaking. And I was like, girl, is that true or are you exaggerating? Because that's it's a little dramatic, but maybe, maybe. Then in her confessional, Kendra says getting caught made her feel dirty all over again because Kendra has a particular past that I think she is really working hard to overcome and maybe run from. And so she said getting caught like this made her feel dirty because people made assumptions. She said, look, we could have been in there reading the Bible. Now, Kendra, if you said y'all didn't do anything, because that's what she said we didn't even do anything. We were getting ready to go to sleep. We were getting ready to lay down. If you said y'all didn't do anything, that I have no reason to believe otherwise. You all are consenting adults. It is what it is. Where I take pause or where I pause is you saying we could have been in there reading the Bible. Y'all could have read the Bible at home. You don't need to go to a hotel for you all to fellowship and read the Bible with one another. That part is where I'm like, girl, now come on. And I get it. You don't like that assumptions were being made, judgments were being passed. I understand that. And yet, if you make a choice to run off in the middle of the night to go and spend time with the guy that you just went on a date with, I mean, come on. Assumptions will be made. And you made that decision. And again, you are grown. You are a consenting adult. So it is what it is. But nonetheless, Kendra said she didn't like that and it made her feel dirty. The next day, we see Esmeralda, who seems to really be fitting in or acclimating to this whole Amish way of living. I think she's really giving it a good try. And because again, she has had some difficulty with adjusting. She said she is supportive of Matt and Kendra getting to know each other, but they should have done it the Amish way. And then we see Aaron and Judah have a conversation amongst themselves. And essentially, Aaron says the same thing. He says, look, we're like a family, and that he wishes they would have talked to them. He said that he didn't know, I guess maybe they didn't tell him directly, I think, but he wishes that they could have all just had a conversation about it instead of the two of them running and sneaking off. And Judah said the same thing. He's like, look, they're going to do what they're going to do, but, maybe not go about it this way. Something to that effect. Before I keep going, do you think that it was such a big deal that Kendra and Matt went to a hotel? Again, they are both adults. They wanted some privacy. Is it such a big deal? And I guess it is if you are saying you want to be Amish. And that is absolutely against the rules. Because the English folk, and obviously the Amish, but the English folk are really upset with Kendra and Matt, especially BJ. Woo! And BJ let Kendra have it, but I'm jumping ahead. So then when Emma, because we see Emma and James at some point, I think they're in the kitchen and they're having a conversation about what was going on. And Emma finds out that James went to the hotel and was banging on the door to the room where Kendra and Matt were. And Emma is perplexed by this. She asked, why would you even do that? What were you planning on doing? Were you gonna ask them why they were at the hotel? And James essentially said, well, yeah, I was gonna have a discussion with them to ask them why they would do this. Why would they think this is a good idea? Emma's looking at him like, dude, you have lost it. And she says to him, at that point, you don't have a right to go and knock on that door and antagonize them. And I agree with that because James, calm the F down. What's really going on? James just oh goodness, he gives me such a weird vibe. His facial expressions, it's something just off with him. Something just doesn't feel quite right to me when it comes to James. And you are so worried, James, about what Matt and Kendra are doing over at the hotel. But what were you and Emma doing in the bathroom? Did it make it better because you all stayed at the house and didn't go to a hotel? But what was going on? Anyway, Emma seems to be really bothered by this. And she says the only thing that seems to make sense, the reason why James would go and behave like that is because he must be interested in Emma. I'm sorry, he must be interested in Kendra. And to that, James says, no comment. And they're in the confessional at this point, and we see that Emma looks down, and James just had this weird look on his face. James just has a look on his face, almost indifferent about what's happening and what Emma is saying to him. He seems very standoffish during that conversation and during some of the other conversations that he has with her, but maybe that's just how he communicates. Cut to Billy Joe. She is livid. She is so upset. And she said, look, this isn't a vacation. She said, this is very real for me. And so she asked, why did you come here, talking about Kendra? Why would you come here and, do this if you said you're going to live the Amish way? Why would you do this? And then we see Alan, and Alan also appears to be really disappointed in the decision that Kendra and Matt made to go to the hotel. And I also wonder if part of what Alan might be feeling is the way that he'll be perceived, because after all, he and his wife are the house parents, and Kendra and Matt did this on their watch. So perhaps he's also worried about how he and his wife will be viewed in the community once people start to find out what happened. So then at some point it cuts back to Kendra and one of her confessional scenes. She says Matt has decided to leave. He has a flight to catch. But she, on the other hand, is feeling confused. Does she also catch a flight, or does she return back to the house and continue with this experience and ultimately join the Amish church? At that point in the episode, she says it's unclear to her, right? There's this level of confusion. But then eventually we see Matt arrive at the house. Matt is not talking to anybody. Matt is giving them the cold shoulder, and some of them are like, this is not very mature. Like, why are you upset with us? Why would you be mad with us? And Matt says he says this in his confessional, because he absolutely gives them the cold shoulder. He does not communicate. He barely looks at them. And Aaron is looking around like, wait, what did I do? Why are you upset? And I believe Aaron was trying to talk with him. Matt was not. He was not engaging at all in conversation. Then we see him, so it's very dramatic. He's outside on the lawn, packing up his stuff. And I'm like, why are you doing this on the lawn? Why are you doing this outside? But he's packing up his suitcase, and everybody's looking at him as they're on the porch. And Billy Joe is front and center, arms folded, like, oh, this is what you're going to do? Because she's already upset. And so she said, oh, he's not even going to talk to us. And I thought that was interesting, because why were you upset that he wouldn't acknowledge you, but you were so upset, and I'm jumping ahead, she was so upset when Kendra wanted to have a conversation with her. So initially Kendra had asked all of them once she got back to the house. She's like, hey, I really want to talk to you guys. And Billy Joe was like, no, I'm not doing that. And then she cussed her out. And I mean, cussed her out, called her a little bitch and all of this, okay? But I'm jumping ahead. So back to Matt. Matt said he was so upset because he felt betrayed. He said he and Kendra confided in these people. Matt got back to the house. He was not talking to those people at all. He was just like, I'm going to get my stuff and I'm going to get out of here. He said, I realize this is just not for me. I want to go back to Alan. So not only did Alan say he was disappointed with Kendra and Matt, but he also said he was disappointed in how James reacted. He said, we don't do this. We do not go over there causing a scene and causing drama. He said the Amish refrain from drama. So he didn't like James's behavior either. Now listen, I get that because we don't want to just go places wreaking havoc now. However, if we refrain from drama, I am curious, do we see conflict as drama automatically? So are we allowed to have disagreements? How do we handle those disagreements? Are we allowed to be honest about how we actually feel and what we want and what we can do versus what we don't want to do? You know, in terms of conflict, I am curious about how that's handled within the Amish community. And I know a lot of what I just said probably has to do with elements of individuality, and we know that is not allowed. Nonetheless, I am curious how they would handle that type of situation if Kendra and Matt were actually Amish. Just a thought. Now, we cut to Aaron. Aaron seems to be doing pretty well. We see him working in the barn and shuffling stuff. He's picking up things, you know, I don't know, because I don't know terminology when it comes to working on the farm. And some people are going to hear that and be like, Shakir, he was just doing blah, 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 blah. Like, you don't have to work on the farm to know that. But here we are. I grew up in Jersey. So even though there are a lot of farms actually in Jersey, believe it or not. Anyway, so my point is Aaron is working, and Alan sees that and he acknowledges Aaron's hard work, and he says he would probably do well, especially once he gets past this whole hearing aid thing. Even though this is a big deal, that's a big deal for Aaron, and he says that. He says he misses his everyday routine, but he does appreciate the simplicity of the Amish lifestyle. And as he considers joining the church and the community, his hearing aids are a huge factor for him. And he feels that he is missing out on so much because he doesn't have his hearing aids. And so that alone, he's contemplating whether or not he would stay. We know Matt is out. Then, and we hear that Aaron is contemplating. Judah also seems to be finding a groove, and we hear more of that at the end of the episode, which I'll get to in a minute. But Judah is also finding his groove. Alan took Judah and Esmeralda fishing, and you know, Judah is becoming more comfortable interacting with the animals and doing a lot of the chores on the farm. And when he first got there, I mean, Judah was afraid of everything. And this is no shade to Judah, because if I showed up on that farm, I would be the Judah of the group. Okay. I would absolutely be the Judah of the group. Like, oh, I gotta shovel this, and I gotta wash this animal, and I gotta chase after this. I'm not doing it. But anyway, Judah seems to be finding his way, which I think is great. What I was starting to say was, we know that Aaron is contemplating because of the major part is his hearing aids. We know that Judah is becoming more comfortable on the farm. We know that Matt has decided to leave, and Kendra ultimately decides to leave. She does say she is going to return to the house, which she does because she wants to have a conversation with them. And when she arrives at the house, she has on her English clothes, she's in her little dress, and she asks everybody if they will have a conversation with her. And BJ essentially was like, nah, not doing it. And BJ was aggressive with her. Earlier in this video, I'd said that BJ was cursing her out. This is when it started to happen. And I was like, oh, BJ, this is a lot of aggression right now. Like, bring it down. You're so upset with her, but you are now acting out toward her. The other folk decide that they will converse with her. And at this point, they're outside. They're all around this table. And BJ is on the porch. And she's just sitting there. And she's sitting there, she's listening, she's watching, because we know this because when Judah started to speak and he said her name, she's like, BJ, what? And he's like, yo, come over here. And she was like, no. And then she goes in the kitchen and she says, there's work to be done. We have so much chores to do. Why are we spending so much time on this? But anyway, let's rewind a little bit. So Kendra's talking to the other folk, and she says she has had so much anxiety and depression, and it has gotten so bad that she realized this just was not for her. She had apologized for making the decision to leave with Matt in the middle of the night prior, but she said this isn't for her. And so we see Judah, it cuts to Judah, and he says, look, we have all had difficulty. I'm paraphrasing. He said, I mean, I really wasn't eating this food, all the, work with these animals. He said the heat, he said, we all have stuff. He said, but at the end of the day, so he said he would have, preferred, and that's what most of them said, they would have preferred that she continued with the experience. But he said at the end of the day, if she doesn't want to be here, then it makes no sense for her to stay, which is absolutely true. This is part of the experience. Once you do something and you're in the middle of it and you say, hey, you know what? This is actually not working out for me. This is not working out for my good. So on that note, I got to take care of me. So kudos to Kendra for recognizing that, and she was out. Well, actually, eventually Judah goes in the house because now BJ went in the house, right? She's in the kitchen and she's cussing Kendra out still. Judah goes in the house and he says, look, you got to say what you wanted to say. Let her say what she needs to say because y'all are good friends. You have been good friends throughout this experience and you all should talk to each other. BJ agrees, but she says that she's going to talk with Kendra one-on-one. So they go off to the side. And then we hear the real reason why BJ is so upset. She said, not only were we so close, or no, she said we were so close to each other, but we made this commitment to see it through together. And she said, it's like, damn, another friend just goes off and does what a boy wants her to do. I was like, ooh. Eventually, BJ does calm down. Kendra apologizes again to her. And, Kendra's crying, of course. And BJ then says to her, like, calm down. BJ has a very interesting way of dealing with news because when they received the news that Emma had left, I'm jumping ahead, BJ was like, well, some people leave. On to the next thing. I was like, damn, very cold-blooded right now. So they make up and Kendra says, she wished she could have finished the experience, but she recognized she was not cut out to be Amish. You got to take care of you. And I hope that Kendra will forgive herself for those past decisions that she is really wrestling with, and she allows herself to move forward. Those were choices that she made. It is what it is. Move forward. Obviously, I know it's not that easy. I'm saying my hope for her, is that she allows herself to get to that place where she can truly move forward in a way that is in alignment with who she is and where she wants to go in her life. And perhaps living the Amish way was not in alignment, and that is absolutely okay. Oh, by the way, Kendra also mentioned to BJ, she also told BJ, because BJ is like, but why would y'all leave? Earlier in that scene, BJ said, what Amish couple are going to go over to a hotel? Kendra said the reason why she and Matt went over to the hotel is because they had a great date earlier in the day and they wanted to continue to get to know each other and they didn't want to have 20 people around. They wanted some privacy. Now, I mean, that's fine, but it absolutely is not in alignment with what the Amish would do. So it makes sense, I guess, why people were really just upset, and the fact that, I guess, how Kendra and Matt went about it, perhaps. So as all of this is going on, James, for the most part, is pretty quiet. And he's watching, with his look. He's watching. And as Kendra leaves, he says that it's unfortunate because she would have made a good wife. She had the potential to be a good wife, and that there was natural chemistry. And so I'm wondering, well, what was going on that we didn't get to see? Was it based in fact? Was it based in reality? Was it just in his imagination? I don't know. But I was like, well, what was happening that we did not get to see, that he said there was this natural chemistry and all of that? So clearly, James had his eye on Kendra, and clearly Emma did not like that. Emma did say that she thinks if Matt and Kendra would have been given an honest chance and if they would have been treated right, that they would have stayed. And the biggest reason why they left is because of the way that the Amish didn't do their part. She said they've done something extremely wrong because there should be no reason for them to want to leave. And when she said that, I thought back to what Judah said, which is, this feels like a cult. Because what do you mean there would be no reason for them to leave? And I guess if you feel that the way you are living or the community that you are a part of is perhaps utopian, then I guess you wouldn't have a reason to leave. But what if you want something different? What if it just no longer works for you? Then you should be able to make that decision to leave and not be shunned or cut off from having communication with your family, with your loved ones. I just think, you should be allowed to also live the way you'd like to live as long as you're not hurting yourself or anybody else. But that absolutely goes against the Amish way. That would go back to, you're being an individual, and that is not allowed, which makes me very uncomfortable because it is so easy to get into that group think mentality. We all think the same, we all think the same. We all have the same beliefs, right? We all run our lives the same way, and anything outside of that is seen as dangerous or the devil or evil, different things like that. And that just makes me so uncomfortable when I hear that rhetoric. And I don't only hear that in shows like this about the Amish, we hear that with other organizations as well. And I just think, wow, if a person isn't able to lean into other thoughts, right, other beliefs, then is the life they're living theirs, or is it somebody else's because you've been indoctrinated into a particular type of society or community? But I digress. Maybe we'll talk about that in another video. But going back to Suddenly Amish, Emma suddenly left. Emma decided to leave the house as well. Here's how that conversation went that she had with James in the middle of the night. She said she didn't want to do this anymore, that she couldn't associate herself with people who lie. And so James is like, where are you going? What do you mean? And she said, I'm going home. She said, I don't want to be here anymore, and I don't want to do this anymore. And she said to James, you clearly have a thing for Kendra. James responded by saying, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Be so for real, James. Be so for real. And that is exactly the type of response that Emma gave him. She said, I can't associate myself with people who lie, with people who deceive. James said, there are a lot of rumors, but they're not true. So then Emma responds, I've never heard such bullshit in my entire life. And then she was out. The producer asked her, does this have anything to do with James? And she said, I'm not sure what you're talking about. She said she felt like she did her best and setting a good example, but that she needs a better leader. So I think that's a shot at James, because James, I guess, was leading everything. James was leading the charge. She said she needed a better leader. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, because is it also guilt because of what you and James were doing, knowing that wouldn't be the Amish way either? Sneaking around, right? Knowing, also related, but I think that part actually might be overlooked. I think it's more so the sneaking around and doing things that you are not supposed to be doing with each other. Is it guilt? Is it also jealousy? Because you believe James has a thing for Kendra, which she says to him, right? And we all speculate, even Alan, he speculates that James has a thing for Kendra. So I'm wondering if Emma's decision to leave was because of guilt, of feeling guilty, and maybe feeling jealous too. Nonetheless, she said there is nothing that can be done to change her mind, that she needed to remove herself. She said whatever James does, that's up to him. But she's done, and it's not worth it. And she's out. And then that's it. So then the next day, James lets everybody know that she's gone and they move on. Aaron says that there is definitely a lot of unrest in the house and that you can't really see it on the surface, but there's a particular type of energy that's there now, right? And folk are just leaving, and BJ was like, everybody's leaving. Where is everybody going? People are leaving, but they know that something is going on, and a few of them were suspicious of what James was saying as to why Emma left, and they were like, I don't think we're getting the full truth, and I don't think we will get the full truth out of James. He was kind of beating around the bush because they thought there was definitely more to the story, and they thought that Emma left because it probably had something to do with James and probably how he felt about Kendra. And so they're like, what's the real tea? But they don't get the real tea. At this point, Alan is like, I don't even know if this is a good idea anymore. We started out with 6. We're down to 4. We lost Emma, right? He's like, I don't know if this is a good idea. Eventually, Alan and his wife, Sarah, I believe that's her name, they go see his brother, Vernon, the bishop. And so the bishop says that, of course, he's disappointed that Kendra and Matt left too, and that he wishes they would have spoken to him and maybe he could have provided a little guidance. But he said their actions were not okay. It's not the Amish way, that there's to be no adultery or fornication. And I believe he mentioned that also after Alan shared with him, he thinks that there was some inappropriate behavior going on between Emma and James. And so again, the bishop is like, we know that that's not okay. These are not the things that you do, especially if you were trying to bring people into the community and show them the Amish way. Vernon charged Alan and Sarah to get this experience back on track. He says, y'all are the house parents. Essentially, y'all got to get it together. So while they're having this conversation, Alan does say that one of the reasons he believes Kendra was having such a hard time there is because she was missing her mom and she wasn't able to communicate with her mom. So he suggests that the English be allowed to communicate with their families. He says that way they'll be able to embrace the Amish community and still have connection with their loved ones. Which makes sense. You want to strip people away from everything and everyone they know? That absolutely can do a number on somebody, right? That can greatly impact them because they essentially lose the support system that they are used to. They lose the love that they're used to. They lose the identity that they've had, which to some extent, I think that's what communities like this want, because again, individuality is not appreciated or wanted. However, to take away all of that from somebody, can absolutely impact their sense of self and belonging. And doesn't that sound familiar? To strip people of their identities and all of that stuff and take them away from their loved ones. But I'm just going to put that out there and then I'm going to move on, okay? Vernon, it seems like he agrees with that, and he seems to still be committed to this process. I think he just really wants to make sure that they understand what they are signing up for if the English decide to move forward and join the Amish church. The way they've been living their lives, they absolutely will not be allowed to do this anymore or to do that anymore. Now, speaking of that and speaking of loved ones, the episode ends with this car pulling up. Somebody gets out the car. It's a woman. She's black. So, process of elimination. She knows Judah. Judah, and it turns out it is she's Judah's mom. And she said, look, she got her little suitcase with her and she says, I am here to get my baby. When I leave, my baby is coming home with me. And so we're going to see what takes place. We saw some clips, but we'll see during the next episode, I guess, whether or not Judah will leave with her. But she said, if I'm going, my baby is going. And she said, I'm prepared to fight. I'm prepared to do what needs to be done. We'll stay tuned to see how that plays out, and whether or not any other family members or friends will show up, or whether or not the English will actually be able to communicate before reckoning day or decision day, before that takes place. We will be watching. Let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think that they were too hard on Kendra and Matt? What are your thoughts about James and Emma? Do you think Emma was experiencing maybe some guilt, maybe a little jealousy? I want to know. I want to know all of your thoughts in the comments. Please share. I want to hear them all. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad you're here, and I hope you come back for the next one. But until then, bye for now.